We are mostly familiar with American heroes. The man in our next story is considered a hero, and while he's not from the U.S., his mission here was important and should not be forgotten.
President Theodore Roosevelt, 26th Chief Executive of the United States.
President Theodore Roosevelt sends ships and soldiers to Latin American countries to show them who is the power in the Western Hemisphere. Roosevelt's foreign policy creates tension through Latin America. Two men set out to spread goodwill. May 1927, Charles Lindbergh makes the first nonstop flight from New York to Paris, 3,600 miles on the Spirit of St. Louis. It brings him worldwide fame. In December, he embarks on another historic flight, this time to Mexico City.
Charles Lindbergh did a goodwill mission and flew into Mexico City, where there were thousands of people there celebrating him.
In 2009, filmmaker Javier Vargas, who works at WGN, documents the story of another pilot inspired by Lindbergh, Captain Emilio Carranza, who had set a number of aviation records.
How is it that no one's heard of this man? He joined the Air Force in Mexico, and he started flying goodwill missions at the time where aviation was just getting started.
Carranza wants to reciprocate Lindbergh's diplomatic mission. Lindbergh contributes, in today's money, $35,000 of his own money to partially finance Carranza's mission to America. The following year, on the morning of June 11, 1928, Carranza leaves Mexico City and after a brief stop, lands in Washington the next day at noon. American dignitaries are there to greet him, and he's congratulated by President Coolidge. A military escort accompanies him as he flies to New York, where he's greeted by 100,000 people with a hero's welcome. He visits West Point to review troops.
Thousands of people were there celebrating him. He kept trying to go back to Mexico City, but the weather was horrible, so he kept delaying.
July 12, 1928, Carranza is having dinner at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel with his father and brother.
And then he gets the telegram that says, "You need to come back to Mexico as soon as possible, or your manhood is at stake."
New York, seen from Governor's Island at the height of the gale as nature hurls havoc at the greater city.
It was probably one of the worst storms of that time, and he decided to leave his meal, go to his plane. His plane was already set, it had gas, and he left at night. And here he is, flying towards New Jersey with a flashlight in his hands, looking at the railroad tracks, because that's the only way they would fly at the time, and we had no radars. So they would look for the railroad tracks and guide themselves back to Mexico, and that's when he crashed.
He crashes in Sandy Ridge, New Jersey. A family picking berries discovers one of the wings, and then the body of Emilio Carranza.
They start telling people, hey, this is Emilio Carranza's plane. You know, it's going to be famous. So they start giving out plane parts. So people start hiding these plane parts. Eventually, veterans from World War I were called to protect his body and make sure that nothing is taken.
Here, veterans reenact how World War I veterans carry the body out of the woods, which is now known as New Jersey's Wharton State Forest. A train transports his body back to Mexico.
It was those 7, 8 men from World War I that decided that they would honor Emilio Carranza every year by having a memorial.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Mount Holly American Legion Post 11.
New Jersey's Mount Holly American Legion Post 11 carries on that tradition, holding a memorial at the site every year. They hang an American flag and a Mexican flag.
Honor. Just like Emilio felt that his stake was at honor, I think these men are the same way.
Several decades after the crash, people find Carranza's fuselage in the attic of a firehouse.
My mother found some items that you might be interested in his belongings.
Over the years, families discover plane parts in their attics and return them. After 75 years, someone even returns the altimeter from Carranza's plane. Carranza is buried in this tomb in Mexico. The Mexican Air Force holds a service every year on July 13th, the day his body is discovered.
If he would have survived, he probably would have been competing with Charles and Amelia for records, and maybe everybody would know who this man is.
Victor Carranza is Emilio's great-nephew.
To have Emilio's flight be hailed as such a success, not only in his country, but in this country, to have met the president, to have the kind of ceremony and circumstance that was given to Emilio back then would be unheard of today. We are Mexican immigrants, first generation, second generation Mexican immigrants, going to a ceremony where American veterans will be honoring a Mexican hero.
In 1931, a 12-foot monument marks the site of the crash in what is now New Jersey's Wharton State Forest. It depicts a falling eagle of Aztec design. The monument is paid for by pennies saved by children in Guadalajara. And today, American children leave pennies there as a tribute to this fallen hero's mission to spread goodwill among nations.